Hey guys, welcome to the first edition of Brain Facts Breakdown.
On the agenda for today, Neuro Anatomy, the anatomy of the nervous system.
Today we will be focusing on several passages from the Brain Facts textbook regarding the location of important structures in the human nervous system. Please open your books to page 7 and follow silently as I read aloud. The forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain, and spinal cord form the central nervous system, which is one of the two great divisions of the nervous system as a whole. The brain is protected by the skull, while the spinal cord, which is about 17 inches, 43 centimeters long, is protected by the vertebral column. The other great division of the human brain is the peripheral nervous system, which consists of several nerves and small concentrations of gray matter called ganglia, a term specifically used to describe structures in the PNS. Overall, the central nervous system is a vast biological computing device formed by a network of gray matter region interconnected by white matter tracts.
Jeez, Christian, what does that even mean? Let's break it down.
Alright, Justin. By now, you should be familiar with this structure called the brain. That is, if you have one.
Oh!
This 3-pound biological machine is responsible for every thought you thought, every action you performed, every test you've taken, and every crush you've had. It truly is a wonder of evolutionary engineering. Don't you agree, Justin?
Completely.
To begin, we will discuss what makes up the brain. The largest part of the brain is the cerebrum. This is the large wrinkled section of the brain, and is responsible for higher level thinking, language, voluntary behavior, and many other functions. The outer surface of the cerebrum is called the cerebral cortex, and is made of structures called gyri and sulci. They form the bumps and ridges you're probably familiar with. The cerebral cortex also contains fissures, which are deep grooves that divide large regions/lobes of the brain. The cerebral cortex is made of gray matter, which is dark tissue of the nervous system that is mainly comprised of cell bodies. Moving on, different sections of the cerebrum each have their own functions and therefore are given their own names. Think of it like a city. A city is divided into streets and buildings, each with their own purpose. The same goes for the brain. The cerebrum is divided up in a similar way. It's divided into two hemispheres, each divided into 4 lobes. The most anterior section of the cerebrum is the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is responsible for higher level thinking, including most aspects of your personality, problem solving, and coordinating movements. The frontal lobe also contains an important space known as the Broca's area. This area is vital for forming speech/words and is located in the left hemisphere. The frontal lobe is further divided into an individual cortex. This cortex is called the motor cortex and is responsible for voluntary movement, such as giving someone a high five or writing with a pencil. I know that's a lot of information to take in, so my partner Justin here is going to briefly explain it.
Jeez, Christian, you always find a way to make things seem complicated. Don't worry, guys. If you want the easy explanation, here it is. The biggest part of the brain is the cerebrum. It's made of gyri, the bumps, and sulci, the ridges, and finally the fissures, which are the deep grooves of the brain. The cerebrum is made of different sections according to function. The forwardmost section is called the frontal lobe, and it's responsible for initiating and coordinating motor movements using the motor cortex. Higher cognitive skills such as problem solving, thinking, planning, organizing, and many aspects of your personality. And it also controls your speech through the Broca's area.
Thanks, Justin. Now let's move on to the next section of the cerebrum, the parietal lobe. This is the section directly posterior, or behind, the frontal lobe. The parietal lobe is involved with sensory processes, attention, and language. Inside the parietal lobe is the primary somatosensory cortex. This is the region located directly posterior to the frontal lobe. Its function is to register tactile information, or in other words, your sense of touch. The sensory cortex as well as the somatosensory cortex, association area, are responsible for proprioception. This key function is what allows you to know where your body parts are located in space at any given time. Another key region in the parietal lobe is the angular gyrus. The angular gyrus is responsible for converting written words into language. Without the angular gyrus, any letter in the alphabet would appear as random lines with no logic or reason. The last major cortex in the parietal lobe is the primary gustatory cortex. This cortex plays a vital role in taste and your sense of taste. Now Justin will give you another rundown. Take it from here, Justin.
Okay, so let's review what we just learned. The parietal lobe is big on perception, obviously. Therefore, it receives a lot of info from your tactile nerves. As Christian mentioned, a significant feature of the parietal lobe is the sensory cortex. This structure is critical to the process of integrating afferent signals from sensory neurons. However, your parietal lobe is still at work even when you're not touching anything. Like you've heard before, there's a sense called proprioception that is responsible for determining where your body is in relation to itself, space, and your surroundings. Proprioception becomes especially important every time you take notes, and you have to look up from your paper to get a little ahead and copy the next bullet. Also included in the parietal lobe is the gustatory cortex, a region used in the sense of taste. If you're having trouble remembering the name or function of this structure, think back to Pixar's Ratatouille. If you remember correctly, you may recall the name of the chef who owned the restaurant that Remy visited. His name was Gusteau. So anytime you're having trouble remembering the name of the structure and the brain responsible for the integration of taste, just think of Gusteau and his tasty food and you'll remember gustatory cortex. Finally, the last notable structure is the angular gyrus. And yes, we see that term gyrus again, meaning the ridge on the brain. This structure in the parietal lobe is important when converting written symbols, for example letters, into language or meaningful thought. You probably utilized your angular gyrus when you saw the name of this video and decided that you needed help with a specific topic.
That makes so much sense, Justin. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And while I'm at it, why don't I discuss the next topic? The third cortical lobe that we're going to discuss today is the occipital lobe. Now, before we begin, think to yourself and see if you can guess what the occipital lobe is responsible for by its name alone. Yeah, if you guess vision or eyes or interpreting the visual information around you, you're absolutely correct. Normally, if you see the prefix OCC or OC, it normally has to do with eyes or vision. So keep this in mind if you're having trouble remembering the name of the occipital lobe. As for structures in the occipital lobe, there isn't much to talk about. Obviously, this is the part of the brain that contains the visual cortex and the visual association area, but these structures are responsible for interpreting information originating from the optic nerve and sending information to other parts of the brain to make you aware of what is going on around you as long as your eyes are open. Watch a video about vision to get a little bit more understanding about this process. Something important to note about the occipital lobe, however, is the fact that while information gathered from the left visual field is interpreted in the right visual cortex, and information from the right visual field is interpreted in the left visual cortex. This crossing over is due to the pathway that visual signals take to get to your back of your brain. More specifically, the information is set to the other side on a structure called the optic chiasm. We're getting ahead of ourselves though, so let's send it back to Christian to get back on track.
Okay guys, so here's a quick rundown on the occipital lobe. The lobe is the most posterior lobe and is located near the back of your head. Its main function is to process visual information using the primary visual cortex. Think of it like how a computer processes information. You press keys on the keyboard, and the computer processes it into something you can read on the screen. This is similar to how your eyes see an image, and then your visual cortex processes it, and in your mind you see an image.
Wow, I never really thought about it like that way. Well, now that we've got that straightened out, why don't we talk about the temporal lobe? The temporal lobe, located right about here, helps to process auditory information and integrate information from the other senses. Neuroscientists also believe that it has a role to play in short-term memory and controlling emotions such as fear and aggression through its relation with the hippocampus and amygdala, structures we will talk about at a later time. Wernicke's area, also found in the temporal lobe, is a piece of the brain responsible for converting heard sound into meaningful language. Damage to this part of the brain will result in Wernicke's aphasia, a disorder that causes difficulty in the comprehension of heard language. But of course, it doesn't stop there. Also included in the temporal lobe is the olfactory bulb, a portion of the brain located right behind your nose responsible for integrating information received from cilia detecting odorants. The auditory cortex, which is a structure used for detecting the sounds around you, and the arcuate fasciculus, which is a white matter tract, meaning it's made up of the myelinated axons of neurons, which helps to connect all the various structures responsible for interpreting language. Think about the Broca's area, Wernicke's area, and angular gyrus, since they're all located in different lobes of the brain.
Stop it right there, Justin. Look how confused everybody is. Let me break it down for them. First thing first, the temporal lobe is located on the outside of the brain, and if you make a fist, it would be in the same position as your thumb. The temporal lobe's primary function is hearing and processing of auditory information along with language and memory. The Wernicke's area is located in the temporal lobe and works as a translator for your brain. It converts sounds into comprehensible language. Now you may have this confused with the angular gyrus. After all, they are very similar. One converts sounds into language and the other converts writing into language. Well, we've got a way for you to keep these two straight. Just think about it logically. You can only write letters, and what are letters made out of? Angles. Therefore, the angular gyrus converts writing into language, while Wernicke's area converts sounds you hear into language. If all else fails, just remember where the two are located. Since the Wernicke's area is found in the lobe associated with hearing, it makes sense that it would be the one that works with the sounds you hear.
Our next topic is the hindbrain. The hindbrain includes the pons and medulla oblongata, which control several autonomic responses such as respiration, heart rhythms, and blood glucose levels. Another part of the hindbrain is the cerebellum. The cerebellum's two hemispheres help control movement and cognitive processes that require precise timing. This is important for all you student athletes and musicians out there. And it also plays an important role in Pavlovian learning, or the reinforcement of good behavior. For example, when you treat yourself to a piece of candy each time you get a question right while studying. The spinal cord is an extension of the brain through the vertebral column. It receives sensory information from all parts of the body. It's critical to the integration of quick responses, which you'll learn soon to be known as reflexes, as well as bringing information to the brain from the rest of the body. Finally, the spinal cord is responsible for directing the movement of muscles and bones around your body by means of motor neurons.
Well said there, Justin. Now let's discuss our next topic, the limbic system. This is a series of structures called the hypothalamus, hippocampus, and amygdala. The hypothalamus is located below the thalamus and regulates hunger, thirst, body temp, and many other functions. It does this through the control of the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is the master gland responsible for releasing most of the hormones in your body. These hormones control everything from how stressed you are to controlling body temperature. This is also known as the reward center because it enforces activities that benefit the body. For example, when you need food, your body makes you feel hungry, and when you eat the food, it tastes good and you feel better. The amygdala controls powerful emotions like fear and aggression. The hippocampus is located behind the amygdala and is involved in memory formation. Another structure in the brain is the thalamus, which is the primary relay station for your senses.
Just to clarify, the pituitary is not part of the nervous system. While it has a major relationship with the limbic system, it is not classified as a part of the nervous system since it's directed by the hypothalamus.
Correct, Justin. And with that, we will conclude our lesson today on Neuro Anatomy.
We hope our video was a lot of help, and we will see you next time on
Brain Facts Breakdown.